In 1910, Henry Ford was about to change the industrial industry forever by being one of the first people to use an assembly line to mass produce a product for the public. His idea of how people could use assembly lines revolutionized the industrial industry for years to come and changed the way things were made, which lowered prices, made things more accessible for the average person, and made many jobs for people in a time when jobs were in short supply. Not only did Ford revolutionize the industrial industry, but he also changed pop culture for years to come. Henry Ford was born on July 30th, 1863 in Dearborn, Michigan, United States, to father William Ford and mother Mary Ford, who were farmers. From a young age, Ford was into machines. Ford and other boys in the nearby area built rudimentary water wheels and steam engines in their spare time. Ford also fixed watches and was fascinated with steam engines and was friends with someone who made them. While Ford could have followed his father's footprints and became a farmer, he decided to follow his passion, which was engines. He left the farm and became an apprentice at a Michigan car company that manufactured railroad cars in Detroit. Over the next 2.5 years, he had many similar jobs in the nearby area, where he learned a lot. Later, Ford was an apt pupil, and by 1896, he rose to be chief engineer at an illumination company. But he was still following his dream. In his spare time, he was working in his barn to make a horseless carriage, and aided by a group of friends, by 1896 they finished their first self-propelled vehicle, the quadricycle. It had four bicycle-like wire wheels and steered using a tiller like a boat. It only had a two-speed transmission and no reverse gear. Henry persuaded a group of businessmen to give him a loan for a company to make and sell horseless carriages in Detroit. The only problem is that Ford knew nothing about running a business, and learning by trial and error always involves failure. The new company failed, and so did a second. Ford realized that he needed to make a name for himself, so he started to build and race cars in his spare time. He won many races, and he started to grow a large following. Some bankers approached him and gave him a loan to start producing the cars he raced, and he created his third and final company, the Ford Motor Company. He started with producing his first car, the Model A. The Model A was a small car, but Ford had a bigger vision, a car for the average man. He started work on the Model T. The Model T was an easy to maintain, do it all car, and the main attraction was that it was cheap. Anyone could buy it easily, and it quickly outsold all of its competitors. Ford wanted to sell as many as he could, so in 1910 they moved into a larger factory in Highland Park, Michigan. At the new plant, they began a relentless drive to increase production and lower costs. Ford hired as many new people as he could, and hired young men that could work for cheap. At the time, hiring skilled workers was normal, but Ford believed that if anyone put their mind to a goal, they could succeed.
This great development, we can have further development, the opportunities for young men. No limit today as there were a few years ago. I think so. Yes, indeed. If a young man makes up his mind to work, there's no limit to what he can do. If he makes up his mind to go at it without the idea of work, he hasn't much chance. He must study and work, and he must go back in any art as far as he can to dig up the very beginning, and he must, the more he goes back, the further he will be able to see ahead.
Ford still knew he could do better. He thought of a new idea. He borrowed different techniques from watchmakers, bicycle makers, and meat packers. He mixed them with some of his own ideas, and by late 1913, they had developed a moving assembly line for the automobile. The assembly line was a more productive way to make cars because instead of a small team of people working to make one car, one person would be assigned to one task on every car, and the cars would be pulled down the assembly line past the worker as he did his task. This made the cars cheaper and easier to make. Ford continued to perfect his technique. Henry responded with his boldest innovation ever. He hired 53,000 people to keep 14,000 jobs filled and had everyone work in 3 shifts, and he virtually doubled wages to $5 per day. At a time when finding jobs was getting increasingly hard, Ford opened a lot of doors for a lot of people. Now people who would have issues finding a simple job could make a good amount of money. People flocked to Michigan to start working for the Ford Motor Company, which really put Detroit, Michigan on the map. Ford used a new method for employees. Instead of paying one person an hourly salary for a full day's work, he would pay multiple people for one job to work in shifts, meaning that he could produce product 24 hours a day. This not only made sales better for Ford, but also made more jobs for people in the area. This meant that many different people had jobs and were getting paid well, changing society and its views on jobs and pay. Ford's assembly line changed the world of industry for years to come. Not only did it change the auto and manufacturing industry, but it also played a big role in American cultural history. Before Ford's assembly line, Detroit was a small town with a high unemployment rate. After his assembly line, Detroit's popularity boomed. Now Detroit is a large city rooted with a deep industrial history. Because of its boom in economy, Detroit produced some of pop culture's most influential artists, and it paved the way for the auto industry today. In 1910, Henry Ford changed the industrial industry forever by being one of the first people to use an assembly line to mass produce a product for the public. Without Ford's influence on the auto industry, everyday life would not be the same for any of us. Ford not only changed the auto and manufacturing industry for years, but he played a large role in American culture. Ford's impact will continue to influence daily life for years to come. We all have Henry Ford to thank for the cars we drive, the products we use and buy every day, and the rich culture we enjoy and are surrounded by daily.